Well, good evening and live from our studio here in Kokomlemle, Accra. This is GRNMA Prime. We're coming to you. We're live on DSTV channel 41, GoTV channel 125, and around the world on myjoyonline.com. My name is Samuel Kojo-Brace.
And I'm Noella Karen Iyali. Tonight, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission have been meeting with striking nurses in a desperate move to halt the nationwide chaos at public health facilities across the country. We have an update on that talks as the Ghana Mortuary Workers Association reports a disturbing spike in bodies received, highlighting the severe human impact of the ongoing strike.
In the event that the nurses, when the nurses were working, we had normal, the people are dying too, but this time around, I think that the death toll is increasing every day.
Also coming up tonight, minority in parliament demands withdrawal of government's one-cedi levy on petroleum product, describing the policy as hypocritical, draconian and amounting to midnight robbery.
We are using the proceeds from the energy sector levy to pay down the arrears. This levy is not intended to pay off legacy debt. Assuming this levy is for debt payment. So is it that they had planned this levy all along and lied that they won't impose a levy?
Meanwhile, drivers temporarily suspend their threats to strike over the implementation of the one-cedi levy. We have fallout from a meeting between government and the drivers a while ago.
Media Foundation for West Africa questions National Media Commission's effectiveness in protecting Ghanaian journalists following recent assault on Joy News journalist Latif Idrisu by an MPP sympathizer who was today remanded in police custody.
I think the biggest failure has been the National Media Commission. We need a much more effective, a much more vibrant and a much more focused and dedicated National Media Commission.
Stay with us. We're back with details.
Joy News Prime Headlines was brought.
Well, tonight, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and striking nurses have been meeting in crunch talks in a desperate move to contain the escalating crisis unfolding in public health facilities. The turmoil stems from the total withdrawal of services by Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, whose indefinite strike has crippled operations in major health facilities nationwide.
Now, although the National Labour Commission has secured a court injunction in an attempt to halt the action, the striking nurses remain unwavering with patients stranded. Now, my colleague Collins Frimpong was on the ground earlier today engaging with some individuals as they struggle through this deepening national health emergency.
Well, there is an update on this particular story. We told you earlier that the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission has been meeting with the nurses. My colleague Collins Frimpong is joining us with some update that we're just okay, so I'm told it's rather Samuel Akplogo who's joining. He is a member of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. I'm grateful to you, sir, for joining us. What is the outcome of this meeting that the Fair Wages has had with you today?
Thank you very much, my brother, and then good evening to your cherished viewers. I'm presupposing that you understand the chronology of our case.
Sure.
That our conditions of service, which we believe the implementation has been unduly over-delayed, leading to the association's decision to roll out some series of industrial actions. And we're very careful when we're rolling out the industrial action because we felt we needed to give time for the employers to get the issues resolved.
Well, it looks like Mr. Akologo's line has dropped there, but yes. Mr. Akologo, can you make your point, sir?
We are not very happy that we are found in this situation. But it has been demonstrated clearly that nurses and midwives are really not very important in our health system. Why am I saying so?
Yeah, I mean, when you met with the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission today, what was the outcome?
We met and we're expecting that our conditions of service is going to be implemented, because the subject matter for the meeting was roadmap to implementations of the conditions of service. Unfortunately, at the meeting, our employers said because of budgetary constraints, our conditions of service can only be implemented in 2026. And we find this to be very unfair, because we put on notice the existence of our conditions of service before this year's budget was read by the new government. For us to come for the meeting today, for us to be informed that because they didn't factor it into the budget, it has actually vindicated our position that there was no intention by the employer to implement our conditions of our service. That is why we roll out the roadmap to press home our demand.
So now that now that you know the reaction by your employer, what do you intend to do? And you know the magnitude of the impact that your strike is having on the health system of the country.
I think our employers are in the country and they are seeing the magnitude of the situation. It is their responsibility to ensure that it is addressed. The mandates of taking care of the health of Ghanaians is placed on the individual. So it is the duty of the Ministry of Health to ensure that we get the conditions of service to be implemented.
Are you going to be on strike till 2026 when your conditions of service will be implemented? Is that what you're saying?
Let me learn. Health professionals are enjoying similar health conditions of service, and we are told to wait until 2026. Is this fair?
So what do you intend doing?
We are here to meet the National Council.
Okay.
And you will be informed what happens.
Okay. I'm grateful to you, sir, for joining us here.
But still in the story, my colleague Collins Frimpong was on the ground earlier today, engaging with some individuals as they struggle through the steepening national health emergency.
The my brother and I by 5:30. Basis our time and share. Normal nurses for strike. I
arrived here with my brother at 5:30 a.m. for treatment, but no one has attended to us because of the strike. They said doctors are supposed to take over, but they are all in the wards. My brother recently had heart surgery, and we're here for a review.
And they buy and so up to now, that's what you
remember last month, and I almost share me say, remember on the 9th, on the 9th. I didn't see me buy.
Nah, idea put in out the buy.
I came here last month. They asked me to return today. I have a heart condition, but there's no one here to attend to me. I have nowhere else to go. I'm supposed to undergo surgery on my stomach, but the doctors said they need to address my heart issues first. Now, there's no one available to help.
Last week almost was strike. This week is almost strike.
I came for a review, but I was told the nurses are on strike. I had surgery on my neck and needed a follow-up. I was here last week too, but they were still on strike. I was told to go home because there were no nurses available.
Well, let's take you to the Ashanti region where the situation is no different.
Here in Kumasi at the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital, the impact of the strike is really down to the lowest patients, even to those who have already been admitted. Unlike last week where patients were trooping in and they were asked out by nurses available, this time around patients are trooping in, but they are coming to meet empty wards and empty units. The emergency unit at the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital, which is a very busy area, always crowded, in fact overcrowded, this time is empty to the extent that beds there are being moved out. My engagement with the people moving the beds are that because the place is not in use, they want to make sure for a mini renovation. I engaged some patients and they described their plea to us.
But I'm trying my enthusiasm and lie how much 5 o'clock number how. I mean, lie, I'm my real so. I'm my own country say young coffee in the area. And you say about you know, be a cool. What to your 2 years come on my receipt. Lucky, some call maybe a shank or lank to our primi phone.
They should have communicated to us before letting us get here and sending us back. Since 5 a.m., I've spent the whole of my day here just to access healthcare. After seeing the doctor and paying all my bills, now they are telling me to go home. Government should really look into how we treat nurses and teachers. It seems they are always neglected.
The neighbor doctor or problem 1 a.m. The neighbor doctor ne. Last week, your doctor chair said, "Nayam fanamra," and I will. I didn't buy I basa. And I'm able to almost
my dad to come for like a scan or something for her abdominal scan. But we went to the scan section and they said that the nurses are on strike, so we can't, unfortunately, we can't do. So we have to go back home and wait till this strike, everything is over. And he's going through a lot. But yeah, he needs medical attention, I know. We have been trying to contact the doctor. The doctor said we should come here. So because he believed that Konfanochi has all the expertise and all those stuff to take those scans and everything. But it seems we came here and unfortunately they said the nurse is on strike, so we have to wait them.
I earlier spoke to the local PR, Martha Yadom, who says that the association is disappointed in the government. They also think that the government has taken them for granted.
It was so long a time that we, the nurses and midwives, knew the strike action would not even reach today. But for the minister or the state to wait until this day means that they are taking nurses and midwives in Ghana for granted. If we say something is essential, it means you cannot do without that thing. So if nurses and midwives in Ghana are categorized under the essential service workers, then I'm sorry, we don't see ourselves being essential. If something is essential, you cannot do without it. So that indirectly or directly, that's how we feel about the state, that they don't see the nursing and midwifery fraternity in Ghana to be the backbone of health.
There are hundreds of patients who are currently making their way out of the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital due to the industrial action. Joy News will be on ground to pick whatever happens as and when it happens. My name is Clinton Yeboah, reporting for Joy News.
Now, still on the strike, the impact of it is hitting harder now. General Secretary of the Association, Ghana Mortuary Workers Association, Richard Kofi Jordan, has revealed an alarming surge in bodies received per day.
Mortuaries are also receiving more deaths as compared to the usual normal working hours, in which in the event that when the nurses were working, we had normal, the people are dying though, but this time around, I think that the death toll is increasing every day.
Do we have any numbers to back it? Where you are, what are the figures that we are getting?
No, I can't give you specifics. But what I know is that, for instance, we know averagely in Kolebu, you can have about 50. This time, right, has risen above that. Other facilities, Konfanochi and all that, we are hearing it. We know, but I can't give you specifics. There are too many too, unless I'm able to collect data in all mortuaries. But as we speak, there is enough evidence to prove that the death toll in our various facilities are increasing.
with healthcare services severely disrupted nationwide due to the ongoing strike, the Director-General of the Ghana Health Service, Professor Samuel Kaba Akoria, is appealing to GRNMA to suspend industrial action and return to the negotiation table.
Let me also take the opportunity to call on our sisters and brother nurses to come back to work. Just like yesterday, I said to one nurse that if you come to the hospital now, you as a nurse, and you are pregnant, you are going to deliver, because she was a pregnant nurse. What are you going to say? Will you say, I won't deliver today because we are on strike? You'll be shouting, let's all do this. Let's go back to the negotiation table. If it's your auntie, your mother who is sick, what are you going to do? Will you say, I won't take her to the hospital because we are on strike? And when you go to the hospital, who do you expect to take care of your mom or you yourself? So I humbly add my voice to the Honorable Minister that please come back to work and let's continue negotiating.
We're joined by the ranking member on Parliament Select Committee on Health, who is also the MP for Ifidiase Asokore in AU every year. Grateful to you, sir, for joining. Now, what is the Health Committee doing to intervene? Now, the nurses say they've been told that the employer can only consider their conditions of service in 2026.
Very good evening to your listeners. Basically, I've thought this is long overdue. I think the nurses obviously has a right, and they're asking for their right. It's not far-fetched, except to say that last year in May they had a deal with government and the Ministry of Health, and for that matter, the Ministry of Finance. Subsequently, they were supposed to get controller to that paying them, and then a part of nurses took themselves to court. So this issue actually has been delayed because of the same nurses. By this time, it was the Professional Psychiatric Nurses Association of Ghana. They took the Ghana registered nurses, the midwifery associations, to court. Otherwise, I'm sure they would have had this implementation done way in May when it was approved on the discussions they had with government, and for that matter, the Ministry of Finance. Subsequently, they took it to court, and so they couldn't get a controller to be instructed because there was this injunction. Now, if I understand the nurses, they settled this issue between themselves on the 25th of January 2025, which means that they themselves delayed the process. Otherwise, the previous government would have implemented it because we respected their rights, and it was their rights, and they bargained for it. And it was due them. It should have been given to them. Now you have a change in government, and this is what I see is happening. Now, the next thing, governance is continuous, and government is continuous. So in this regard, we have resolved our internal issues in January. So give us a hearing and continue with where we were for controller to approve. And the Ministry of Health sees to the implementation. Unfortunately for them, it's a change of government. And I think the communication between them and the Ministry of Finance, and for that matter, with government, has not been the best of it. And that is why we have a stalemate. And my understanding from the nurses also is that they have waited for quite so long between January to June, which is about 6 months, almost 6 months. So basically, it is...
Well, Doc, so can the committee in Parliament do anything to intervene? Because we don't know the reaction of the...
We in the minority first have to state my position clear. We are not happy about the posture of government. You need to meet them. You need to engage them, respect the nurses for their rights, and let them have an understanding of your situation and see how you are going to draw a roadmap. And that is what they are not getting. The finance people told them will be way in January. They said they will have time for them on the 18th of June. Now, you know the essential services by the Act 625, Section 10. Now, if they are essential services, when they wrote to the Labour Commission, you should have responded to them within 72 hours. You didn't do that. And you have taken them to court. And I think that action by government is an action in bad faith. But nonetheless, what I'm asking of the nurses is that we have to be a bit more lenient, okay? We expect a discussion between in Parliament to provide oversight and bring the agencies together.
Okay.
So that we don't lose lives and you get your money and what next, okay? So I'm a medical doctor, I'm a politician, I'm guided first by ethics as a Ghanaian, and what we are saying is that the nurses are so right. You are right. I know you are right. But can we exercise some restraint? And this is more going to be our posture in parliamentary committee when we get them together.
Okay.
We will let government have to admit that you make them wrong.
Okay.
You should have met them.
All right.
They should meet them.
All right,
Speak to
Doc.
them well. Calm them.
All right, Doc, I'm grateful to you for joining us here on Joy News Prime.
Now, the minority in Parliament has ignited a fiery debate demanding the government's immediate withdrawal of the contentious one-city levy on petroleum products. At a news conference, the minority described the levy as draconian, hypocritical, and akin to, quote, midnight robbery, unquote. Now, the Energy Sector Levy Amendment Bill, which has already been passed by Parliament and assented to by President John Mahama, was expected to take effect today. But government was forced into a temporary U-turn following a fierce opposition from transport unions and the Chamber of Oil Marketing Companies a while ago. The minority called on government to suspend implementation of the policy. James Abeji has more from Parliament.
The ranking member on the Energy Committee, George Kwame Abuaji, first cited the inconsistency in President Mahama and his Energy Minister, John Jinapor's communication on the real intention of the tax, accusing government of deceiving Ghanaians.
President Mahama on May 13, 2025, at African CEO Summit in Abidjan. This is what he said, and I quote, "We are using the proceeds from the energy sector levy to pay down the arrears," unquote. Honorable John Jinapor, the energy minister, also on June 4, 2025, this is what also he said on Joy FM, City FM, and Joy News. I quote, "This levy is not intended to pay off legacy debt. Assuming without admitting that this is for debt payment, how can you pay $3.1 billion, that is amounting to 80 billion cedis, total debt, with 9 billion cedis, which will accrue by December 2026 from this levy?"
MP for Ofuasia Yorebi and also ranking on the Committee on Economy, Kojo Nkrumah also described the levy as a midnight robbery of Ghanaians.
This Dumsor levy has no minimum threshold. The poor are actually the most affected because, unlike the rich, for the poor, every single cedi counts a lot more. And that's why we say it's midnight robbery. The e-levy, number 4, was payable only by people who opted to do money transfers. This Dumsor levy is payable by all Ghanaians, unless you decide to work every day. Because even if you're a farmer and you are buying fuel for your tractors to work on your farm, you will pay this Dumsor levy that this government has just imposed.
They offered some remedies on how government can deal with the situation.
We think that what the government should do is to conclude the renegotiations of the of the power purchase agreements which were started by the previous administration, and to pass on two things: the fuel and capacity charges into the PPAs. Government should include these in the tariff calculations to eliminate the need for off-book debts that are caused by the take or pay clauses in the energy sector contracts that were signed between 2013 and 2016. The government should quicken the efforts to bring efficiency into the operations of GRIDCO and ECG to reduce transmission, distribution, and other technical losses. We're asking government to pursue the strategy that we proposed in 2024 to go heavily into renewable energy, as advertised, for example, in our manifesto, to reduce the need for fuel importation and its consequent negative impacts on the economy.
But what do they intend to do if government does not heed to their call?
We as a minority group representing over 10 million Ghanaians, and sometimes people say, oh, they are just 88. In our 88 constituencies, you will find over 10 million Ghanaians. We want to advertise that we'll be embarking on the following. Number one, we'll continuously engage the people of Ghana, civil society groups, driver unions, and the media to showcase the true impact of this draconian and negative levy that the government is imposing on us.
As it stands, President John Mahama has already assented to the bill, awaiting full implementation by stakeholders. But the minority is claiming their resolve to get government to back down. James Savage's report for Joy News.
Well, that was my colleague James Savage from the Parliament there. But meanwhile, the Ghana Private Road Transport Union, GPRTU, has temporarily suspended their threat to strike over the one city levy. Away from that, the Media Foundation for West Africa has criticized the National Media Commission for its perceived ineffectiveness in protecting journalists following the recent assault on Joy News journalist Lateef Idrisu. The alleged assault by MPP sympathizer Theophilus Thompson on Joy News journalist Lateef Idrisu happened during his coverage of the detention of the MPP Ashanti Regional Chairman Bernard Ntwibo-Siako, also known as Chairman Wuntumi, in Ioko custody. Mr. Thompson has been remanded into police custody and set to reappear before the court on 18 June 2025 after pleading not guilty to a count of assault and threat of death. We'll hear from Suleiman Abraham Asholi, but first, here is a wrap of what happened in court today.
Well, after several minutes of court deliberation, the accused person, 55-year-old Theophilus Thompson, has been refused bail, although that is not what his lawyer would have wished for him. His lawyer argued in court that his client was not a flight risk and had a permanent place of abode and should therefore had been granted bail. But the state prosecutor also argued that if he was granted bail, he could tamper with the current ongoing investigation. They also did indicate that since some of the suspects are at large, it will not be best to grant him bail. Well, counsel for the accused also pleaded with the court to temper justice with mercy and urged the court not to punish his client by refusing him bail. So hearing the pleas of both sides, the presiding judge decided not to grant him bail and remanded him into custody to reappear before the court on the 18th of June 2025. Well, there are still others who are at large, and the police say they are continuing their manhunt for them. Bigwigs of the New Patriotic Party, including Nana B, who is the national organizer, and also Salam Mustafa, who is the deputy general secretary of the party, all showed up in court to support Theophilus Thompson. The 18th of June is ticking, and we will definitely be here to bring you more. From the Circuit Court, my name is Kenneth Jesse for Joy News.
And we can now listen to the Executive Director of Media Foundation for West Africa, who has charged the National Media Commission to do more to protect journalists in the line of duty.
I think the GJA, particularly the current leadership, has shown a lot of commitment and a lot of passion for the fight for press freedom. And let's not forget that this is just an association. It doesn't have the powers to enforce any legislation. It doesn't have the powers to prosecute, for criminal offenses. But I think the biggest failure has been the National Media Commission. And the last time we had the opportunity to meet with the Constitution Review Committee, some of us made that clear, that in order to ensure that journalists are responsible, are professional, and the freedoms that are provided for in our Constitution to be respected, we need a much more effective, a much more vibrant, and a much more focused and dedicated National Media Commission. And it will require some changes happening in terms of the composition and in terms of the law that sets up the NMC by way of the NMC Act, to ensure that we truly and honestly have a media regulator that is indeed a regulator, not just on paper, but also in action.
This is still Joy News Prime. We will take a short break. We'll be back with more. Please do stay. All right, welcome back from the break.
Now, Ghana's ambitious Gold for Oil program, once touted as a bold fix to the country's crippling dollar shortages and surging fuel prices, has now turned into a fiscal headache, racking up over 2 billion cedis in losses amid a deepening currency crisis and dwindling reserves. Now, there's more in this analytical report by Joy News' research.
Since its rollout in January 2023, the Bank of Ghana has disclosed that it incurred losses of 317 million Ghana cedis in 2023 and 1.82 billion cedis in 2024 under the Gold for Oil program. That brings the total losses to some 2.14 billion Ghana cedis. According to the central bank, it injected 4.69 billion Ghana cedis into the program, effectively losing 45% of the capital it deployed in an effort to stabilize fuel prices and support the cedi. On March 13, 2025, the bank officially ended the Gold for Oil initiative, citing the heavy financial losses sustained as a primary reason for shutting it down. The entire arrangement was never subjected to parliamentary oversight. The ruling government argued at the time that the Gold for Oil program was not an executive policy but a central bank initiative and therefore did not require parliamentary approval. The cedi did stabilize months after the G4O's launch and fuel prices fell. While it's hard to isolate the program's direct impact from that of the IMF deal signed in May 2023, the reduced dollar demand from oil importers likely contributed to easing Ghana's exchange rate pressures. But there's still loads of questions unanswered around the Gold for Oil program, which has lost some 45% of its working capital.
To Parliament now, where the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, says Parliament is ready to draft a bill supporting lifestyle audit of individuals suspected of corruption. This development comes amid increasing demands from anti-graft campaigners and the Office of the Special Prosecutor for stricter measures to monitor and recover assets from public servants and politically exposed persons. James Aveji reports.
Parliament in March 2025 signed a memorandum of understanding with Key Accountability Institutions Network consisting of SRAJ, IOCO, OSP and others to combat corruption and crime. Parliament under the obligation is expected to initiate the National Integrity Awards to recognize and honor citizens who demonstrate exceptional commitment to ethical conduct and transparency. Briefing the Speaker on progress of work so far, SRAJ Commissioner Joseph Whittal says, although there have been some initial challenges, they have made headway in getting other institutions to sign on to the cause.
While the intent of the MOU has been convincing, implementation has faced challenges, including the inability of heads to meet regularly as envisaged. However, I believe today's meeting is a corrective and forward-looking step in the right direction, and that it behoves us at this meeting to chart a new way forward.
Reacting to the development, Speaker Alban Bagbin first called for deeper collaboration between key accountability institutions to help deal with the widespread corruption among citizens.
As rightly noted in the preamble to the Memorandum of Understanding, the lack of coordination and collaboration among key accountability institutions has diminished the potential for institutionalizing the culture of transparency and accountability in public life.
He also indicated that the Integrity Award will run concurrently with what he calls the Vulture Award, which will name and shame people who are deeply involved in corruption.
This, we will identify such a person and name the person when we are doing the awards for the persons of integrity. Whether the person attends to take the cross or not, it will be hung there on the person's neck. Very, very important.
On the raging call for legislation for lifestyle audit of citizens, He said Parliament is ready to begin the drafting of a bill.
And I was happy to hear OSP also include it in their statement. We will legislate and we will stop this impunity of people flouting ill-gotten wealth in the face of poor Ghanaians.
The two parties will draft modalities for a smooth rollout of the Integrity Award in the coming weeks. James Savaji, Parliament House, Accra.
And it's been 2 long years since the raging waters from the Akosombo and Bong dams swallowed homes and scattered lives across the North Tongue in the Volta region. Today, they endure scorching tent and finished houses and promises that seem to wash away just like the floods. Join UC series after the floods. Fred Kwame Asare returns to the heart of the devastation where hope still fights to stay afloat.
1 year after the floodwaters swallowed homes, many in Mepe are still waiting for a place to call home again. For Theodora and her family, the wait has been long and unbearable. Her family is one of over 100 households living in temporary UNICEF tents at 3 resettlement camps in the North Tongue district. Their mud house was swept away, leaving them with only what they could salvage.
Face that kind of problem.
At Camp 1, a 10-unit structure built by the government sits empty. The flood victims say it was hurriedly constructed and unlivable.
We 2 weeks. Hey, come to Akabo to Holagama. Kogiamo, watch 2 weeks, just 3. You'll be ever packing me. I be household. One may we are to Yano Kogi the camera. Yeah, I mean like Balena or Levy. Look at Allo Bumio. Want to know that Mamma or Doka prove your clinos Ronano Homer. Well, I tell you. I'm a flamina. Nuka komi jela woju. E kale fa famina na ke pomo. If you want packing me abi sadine and atro ho de kama.
The government's resettlement project remains incomplete, but concerns are growing over the cost and quality of the new housing units.
They are putting up 20 rooms, which is 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, no toilet, no bath, small 6x6 porch. Do you want them to stay or to sleep? And they are laying it without mortar joint. When you push it with your hand, the whole thing will collapse. And this building alone, when I tell you the cost of it is reaching 1 million Ghana cedis, it's about 800,000 Ghana cedis for these 2 bedrooms alone. Why is the government wasting money in somebody's pocket? Please compensate the victims so that they go to their homes and leave the camps for you.
For these victims, it is not just about shelter, it is about dignity, security, and a chance to rebuild their lives. They are not asking for much, just a home that is safe, decent, and truly theirs.
I'm the Garakam with a can of Hogakam. Daminogy. I got 8 billion. I got to a home. And I got Mr. Gom. Me and your gamma to be away. No chunk and a minya to me. Gear next year, Chomile. Minya Bechi Chopo. Nila planning Balapuji at Wapi. Nia planning Balapuji at Wapi. Go over packing me that day. Go Helen Gula Mienti near the Capomo.
Over 1 year after the floods, they are still waiting, but for how much longer? From Mefe in the North-Down district of the Volta region, my name is Fred Kwame Asari for Joy News.
Quite sad descriptions there in the videos that you see in there. But away from that, the Fisheries Commission says a search party led by the Ghana Police Service is still working to locate 3 Ghanaian fishery observers who went missing aboard different vessels at different periods of time. Over the last 3 years, the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture has had cause to caution foreign industrial trawlers that their licenses could be revoked should attacks on Ghanaian observers persist. However, speaking on that front, the new Executive Director of the Fisheries Commission, Professor Benjamin Campion, told Blessed Soga that the human rights concerns have not been fully resolved. He says, as of now, 3 Ghanaian fishery observers remain missing.
The police are still investigating, and so
looking for 3 Ghanaians who we can't find.
Of course, not all disappeared at the same time at different times and at different circumstances. And so, but the important aspect is that they disappeared when they were associated with fishing activities, and therefore we have to account for them from the fishery sector. The challenge is the sea is such a vast environment, and so when the person comes, if the person had a tracking device on his body, it's easy to say, okay, you disappeared at this point. Yes. We never, but you don't have a tracking device on your body. The person says, we all came, we disembarked. Maybe he didn't go home. Yeah, so the problem...
That's serious.
The problem now is your word versus the other person's word.
Do you in any way take responsibility for what's happening?
At least when it comes to loss of life, the Commission is very much committed to getting to the bottom of it. This a family person, someone who was employed and providing for the family. And so, of course, for every human life, we are committed to making sure, not just for the lost ones, but we still have observers. And so we have to put in place mechanisms for them to feel safe at work.
Meanwhile, from next month, the Fisheries Commission is expected to roll out the periodic close season for industrial trawlers. Although artisanal fisherfolks will not be affected, Professor Campion says a closed area policy will be introduced as an additional measure to ensure that the fishes can breed more in order to improve the country's stock.
That our stocks from the 1990s, what we were harvesting, we are now getting less than 1/10 of that. And so it is seriously declining. That's why we put in place all the measures like the close seasons. And so we now have close seasons for these trawl vessels. We are also moving to put in place close areas. And so close areas means that around some particular areas that we as a commission have defined, basically they are usually spawning grounds, places that the fishes at a particular season go to breed. And so those areas will also be cordoned as no-go areas for fisheries. So we'll be putting in place some of those, and of course, we are going into strict enforcement of the law, surveillance, and other. In terms of the close season, all the industrial fishing vessels have been observing close seasons already. So from June to August, will be close season for them. The tuna vessels also have a different close season.
You mean starting this month?
No, I mean July to August, not June.
Okay, not June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's where I bounce off and leave it to the girls because, look, Becky Bex is going to join Noella to do their own thing. So thanks.
Your favorite.
For exactly.